Good evening, everybody. Hello, welcome to tonight's design talk. I don't know if you've been watching the series so far or whether you've just joined us for the evening, but it's really great to be with you this evening. You'll notice slight difference if you've been joining me for the past few presentations, because I'm actually from home today rather than from the studio. The reason being is that this morning I received one of those track and trace memos saying you've been somewhere where somebody could potentially be infected, and so now you've got to stay at home. So I'm now in isolation for the next 10 days. And so that means we have had to quickly adapt and bring you this presentation from inside our home study. So that's fine, but I just hope you can cope with any sounds of my husband eating his cheese and biscuits in the background while he's doing the technology for me. But anyway, it's lovely to have you and to be speaking about the topic tonight of the challenges of dealing with a large kitchen or a small kitchen. They both have their really unique challenges, and I'm sure if you're on tonight, it's because you've got one set of those problems. You've either got a very small kitchen or a very large kitchen, and you're really interested to know what ideas we have. And I'm hoping that by the end of this, you will have ideas, pointers, thoughts, things you hadn't thought about before tonight on how to actually approach your space and what things you could do to really benefit your space. Now, because I'm working from a computer and I can't see your faces, so I'm afraid I can't say hi to familiar people, and I can't see comments as they come up. So, but what I am aiming to do is to run through the presentation with you. I'm going to start with the small kitchens and then end with the larger kitchens, and then hopefully finish by about 8:10 and give you 20 minutes for your own feedback and questions. And you can do this by typing into the chat bar at the bottom of the screen and just either writing your questions. And I suggest, if you have questions as I'm going along, do feel free to write them. If they get answered before we get to the Q&A section, well, great, I've done a good job. But if there still remain, then they could be picked up later, and then we can use those last few minutes to look at specifically trying to answer those questions for you. So that will be better than putting us on and off mute and then maybe having background noise. So I'll get going on the presentation, and you remember to put your comments in the chat line for me, because that would be really helpful at the end. Then we won't be waiting for everyone to comment. Brilliant. So looking at the challenges of a small or a large kitchen. As I said, I'm going to start with the small. And essentially, I've thought of a few things which, in my 16 years of dealing with clients and of all kitchens of all shapes and sizes, every kitchen has its unique fingerprint. And these are the problems that the people with the small kitchen seem to say to me most often. I'm not going to cover everything, but most often. First thing is storage. I do not have enough storage. Help me with my storage. The second one is worktop space. So they might have a medium amount of of storage, but then there's nowhere to put anything on top of the worktop once they've cooked it or they've got the sink in the way. The third critical area is the space for appliances. It's quite often in a small kitchen that you want to get a lot out of it. So it may be doubling up as a utility room as well, having the washing machine and broom cupboard, etc. in there. So having a space for the actual appliances that you want to house in there is another important thing. And clutter. Clutter is such a key for the small kitchen, because obviously there's less space to put things. So things have to be either hidden well, or you have to be very careful with getting rid of things. And the end result could be clutter if you're not careful. So as we look through these challenges, these are the first 4 things that I want to really tap into with the small kitchen arrangement. Essentially, the people with the small kitchens are saying, make it bigger. Obviously, physically, it's almost an impossibility. If it starts small, it's going to pretty much end small. We can do some pushing into the structure, and I will mention some of those things today, but essentially, please, could you make it feel bigger? So what I've done is I've compiled a list of my, I guess, my top do's for what we should actually try and do in these kitchens to give you maximum space when you're tight on all of those areas. The first is, obviously, foremost, is use clever storage systems. If you are short on space, the space that you've got is critical, and therefore you've got to be very clever with it. It's common knowledge, I'm not reinventing the wheel here, but that drawers are a better system than cupboards. They are more expensive, but they are worth their weight in that respect. So I'd say definitely, if you're investing in a new kitchen, and wherever you can, to place drawers instead of cupboards in the smaller kitchen, you're really going to get better bang for your buck, I think, as they say, because basically you're going to be able to reach in, you're going to be able to see everything. As you open a drawer, you can see what's at the back as well as at the front. I mean, in terms of food storage, obviously this enables you as the owner of the kitchen to rotate your goods quite quickly. So if your pasta, for example, is going out of date, if you've got pasta in a drawer instead of a cupboard, then you bring it to the front, you use it, you get rid of it, and you rotate your food ingredients around so that you use them efficiently. Alternatively, you use the drawers really efficiently, and it's not just the drawer itself, it's how to use the drawer. So as you can see in this rather lovely island arrangement that Somatic's got here, there are cutlery arrangements which I would say are really important. I've had people talk to me about cutlery and how much cutlery they have and what size implements they have. And actually having a cutlery arrangement that isn't fixed, that's slightly movable, or at least you can select it in the first instance where the arrangement goes so that you know how much space you have for utensils, how much for knives, forks and spoons. These are really important. Whereas large drawers, having the ability to stack things like saucepans one on top of each other without having divider rails that get in the way, I think is a great idea in a small kitchen. Not only for having drawers in the kitchen, but why not think where we do happen to have cupboard doors, and there are times when we either need them because we want the front to look like a flat face door or a shaker door to line up with something next to it, and we don't want the breakage of the drawer line, or maybe it's a corner carousel. We want to make the insides work effectively. So I just want to point out a few little things. The first, as I hope you can see my cursor moving to now, is that even though it's a cupboard door we're opening here on the left-hand side of the picture, this tall larder door, you have the ability, for example, with Somatic, to put drawers inside, and these drawers go right from edge to edge. In other words, they aren't affected by the hinges, so we don't lose drawer space because of that. And having a drawer inside a cupboard means, once again, much more effective viewing, access and rotation of the things inside the cupboard. So I highly recommend, wherever you can, in a large, tall unit, to have at least 3 of these roll-out drawers. You can actually get 4 in. Obviously, above that height, you start to lose the benefit of a drawer and you need cupboards. So having storage like this, again with a Multimatic track, it means tracking inside, and this is the tracking that you can see inside the carcass, means you can actually adjust the internal shelves by 16 millimeters increment. That also is a benefit when you have a small kitchen, because if you have that, if you're preparing for a family, you have that large packet, normally Weetabix or a family Rice Krispies or something, but you just can't quite get it on the shelf the right way up. It's really important to be able to adjust your shelves so you're maximizing what you can get on every shelf. Likewise, in the door, you can see the Multimatic tracking here, which is inset into the door, running in there to allow access to all kinds of accessories that will go on the door. So from foil holders, Nespresso capsule holders, kitchen roll holders, etc., all on the door. And let's face it, we expect that of our fridges. We never expect to open our fridge door and see an empty door on the inside. We expect to have that to house, say, our milk, our butter, our eggs, etc. That's making good use of a door on the inside, and we expect our doors to do the same. So make sure that we use our insides of our cupboards as well as our outside. Here is a middle example, is just some things that you could place in a cupboard, and the right hand side on the picture is actually showing a corner unit. And of course, when you're using corner storage, the worst thing to use is a blind corner unit, which is where the shelves don't come out to you. They're actually just shelves in there. They can be useful if you've got large kitchens and you happen to have a corner. Well, that could be a great space for storing perhaps the fondue or something that you really don't use very often. But in a small kitchen, you may decide that a corner you actually want to get away with not having at all. And sometimes it might be better to have a void in the corner, but a really functional drawer unit right up to the corner and maybe on the next corner as a preference to a corner unit. If you are having a corner unit, then a carousel that comes completely out so that you can see from front to back is the perfect idea. But don't forget, if they're rounded like the current Le Mans kidney shaped ones, then you'll need to put things in there which are also round. You can't fit a square peg in a round hole. Neither can you put square things on these corner carousels. They're made for things like saucepans and tins, but then they'll work really, really well. Thirdly, I just want to point out you'll see as we go along in these slides, I've borrowed some from Pinterest. I hope you are all familiar with Pinterest, but if not, it's a great place to go and collect information and create your own little palette of ideas. So I do that as well. And in this one, I found a picture of a kitchen which has got a great set of rails in there. And that's my other thing, is when we're trying to keep worktops clear and storage space is limited, make use of the blank space, the in-between space, that space between the worktop and the start of the tool units. And in this case, they fill both sides with utensils, hanging blocks, etc. There's some great systems. I would also say to think outside the kitchen area a little bit. You may have a wall with two doors on one either end, so that the wall effectively is blank and you can't put any cabinets on. But why not make that a magnetic wall or a poster wall, or a wall with some rails that you could hang your apron on, for example. Anything shallow that you wouldn't bump into, and always make sure that you're not going to knock it at head height, or obviously child head height, if you do have something protruding. But where there's no safety hazard, it's a great place to hang things like aprons, oven gloves, etc., and to accessorize your kitchen and make it look a little bit pretty. So those are some ideas simply for making your storage systems work better for you. The second thing I really feel about smaller kitchens is to investigate your innovative technology. Now, most of us only do a kitchen every 10 or so years. So with a time lapse of 10 years before we're actually creating another kitchen, it's very clear we're not going to be up on the latest technology when we come to do our kitchens, which means a bit of research and trusting the experts of those who are in kitchen design to tell us what are the latest gadgets that are out there that are available. What we don't know, we're never going to consider as an option. And there are some really helpful appliances, etc., that can really help take the pressure off of a small kitchen. Perhaps my favourite of all time is the Kuka hot tap. I mean, it's not just Kuka that make hot taps. You've got many other companies that making hot taps, but the boiling water tap. In fact, sometimes these taps don't just do boiling water, but they do boiling, chilled and sparkling, as well as your regular hot and cold, and of course filtered as well, all in one tap. The Kuka Cube, for example, does all of those things, which is a pretty amazing feat for such a beautiful tap. What that does, of course, is it takes the kettle off of your countertop, which means that you perhaps could have an island and a bank of units, whereas you wouldn't normally want to have a kettle sitting on an island. If you have a bank of units behind you and an island in the middle, the Kuka hot tap or a boiling water tap is a brilliant way to go. If you still got your sink facing the wall and still got your tap there, you could perhaps have your your kettle on the countertop, but it just gives you so much room for things like toasters or coffee machines, etc., if you have one less appliance sitting on the countertop itself. So that, I guess, is my favourite quick and easy space saver for worktops. Use hideaway appliances if you can. This is an example of a downdraft. I'm sure that you've already come across these downdrafts before. The technology is not very, very new, but it is something which you can fit into a small kitchen quite successfully. Firstly, if you're doing it on the island and you have quite a small island, but you want people to perhaps perch behind or sit behind. Some people are concerned about the splattering when you're cooking affecting people behind them. So actually having this downdraft that rises when the hob's in operation and tucks away when the hob's not in use is a great way to kind of create a small barrier between you and what's behind without being an obstacle to those behind, and certainly preventing the usual scenario of you having a big ceiling extractor that actually stops you seeing the lovely view that people are presented with, which is one of the reasons why they wanted the island in the first place, so that they could see out to meet people or to be onto the garden. But even if you're actually cooking against a wall, so that you're placing your hob against the back wall of the kitchen rather than on an island, as long as you have the room for the extra appliance, the downdraft to sit behind, it's a great use of space, and that's because you have this extra deep worktop which gives you places behind to put your utensil jars if you want to, or your clock, anything that you've perhaps gadgets that you've got out in the kitchen. And obviously you've got the rise and fall of that, and it totally releases the wall cabinets above to be able to house perhaps full of spices, or even some crockery that you might need that will be easy to take and use for cooking on the hob. So you actually open up a whole nother wall unit that you would have otherwise had to use for extraction purposes. These ventilation come with recirculating or venting out. So there's options there for to meet the needs of your home. Here's another little lovely appliance that I think has got a benefit beyond just the function that it itself does, which is steam combination cooking. That's the oven that you can see on the top here. This is a 45 centimetre high oven. Its combination is the best option because you get the extra cooking facility in with it. But even if you didn't go for the combi and you had a steam oven, one of the benefits is, alongside all the benefits that steam cooking does for you and your food, is that once you've put things in the hob, in the oven that you would normally put on the hob, you actually discover that you no longer need as big a hob as you once did. We got to a point where our hobs went from kind of a small 4-ring to a big 4-ring to a 5-ring to 6-ring, and then to domino hobs, where basically people are investing in bigger and bigger hobs, feeling like the more pans they've got on the hob, or the more possibilities, the better. But obviously in a small kitchen, this is being balanced alongside that precious, precious need for worktop space for cutting and prepping and plating up. And where we don't have the luxury of being able to have a large hob and the extra work surface, you can actually reduce even down, I would dare to say, to a smaller 2-ring hob if you are prepared to reconsider what you're cooking and you're able to put some of that workload into the steam oven. Obviously, if you're doing lots of wok cooking and frying, that isn't a possibility. But if you're the type of person who simply cooks lots of vegetables, these can all be done at one go in the steamer on a timer without you watching over, being present. So actually it makes for a much more relaxed cook once you've learned how to use the steamer too. So I really recommend the use of trying to get things off of where you would want to use your workspace and up into an oven if you can do. I know it's kind of not technology, but I wanted to put, there was no other place for me to put this in, and I really wanted to put the power of a mirror in here. This beautiful kitchen, I think, really does show the impact that a kitchen has when a mirror is in it. And I just love the cleverness of this mirror actually being put at mid-height. So instead of being positioned as a full splashback, this smaller kitchen, it perhaps wasn't so practical. They've got a gas hob. You can imagine that there'll be quite a lot of splashing, etc. from there. So having this very practical granite or marbled splashback is a great idea in this kitchen. But then connectivity with elsewhere and who's behind you, and just brightening and lightening this kitchen. This was a great idea to place it just underneath the wall units so that actually the user gets the visual of what's going on behind and can really have that interactivity. I think this using mirrors is such a clever way to play with space and light and connectivity that if you're a very small kitchen, then mirrors is definitely something that you should be putting in somewhere to help you out. So we've looked at storage, technology, and my third thing is to really make the most of walls that don't have windows. Now, we all know, as I mentioned before, that every kitchen is so unique, and our pattern of our kitchen is very different. So how many doors you have going into your kitchen is of course going to affect what you're going to be able to do with the outcome. And it's unfortunate when you have a small kitchen and you have 3 entry points. I mean, it makes it extremely difficult. You begin to run into obstacle after obstacle. Or maybe you've got 2 entry points, but they're diagonally opposite instead of being along one wall, which means you don't have the benefit of 3 walls. You may have windows on 2 sides and a door on another. Each floor plan is unique, but making the most of walls that exist without windows is a real must. Here's an example of a project that I took on a few years ago now, where the house had a relatively small area of the kitchen. It's not tiny, but it was compact in this compartment. And if you look at this picture, you can see that one side, which is the one with the bank on, had a wall, a full height wall, one a full height window. The other actually has a doorway and 3 windows. And then the part that we are standing behind, taking the photograph, is actually open to the lounge. So when you have a room like this, it's really important to take to maximize that back wall. What can we put on that back wall? Put all the load on there so that basically having anything else like an island, a peninsula, or a G-shape or C-shaped kitchen, the work is taken from the countertops to release countertop. So in this case, we have a fridge freezer on one side. We have a larger full height storage. We have cabinets above and below, 3 ovens, one of which is a main oven and coffee machine, and then I can't remember if that's a combi steam or a combi microwave, but another oven appliance. So that leaves the worktop nice and clear for the people who are doing the preparation. Sometimes you've got ceilings that just have huge heights, you know, a small kitchen, but great amount of height. And this is a really old photograph that we took, and it was just taken by a snap camera, so the visuals aren't that good. But I just like the fact that you don't, when you're doing a bank of units or you're using added height, you don't have to just block it in. You can be creative and think, well, who am I? What do I want my home to look like? What storage space do I really need practically, and what could I get away with being a little bit more, you know, on the aesthetic side? So what suits me? And in this case, the client has got these 3 holes, if you like, or storage holes, in which she's got her little storage baskets that she puts individual things in each. And rather than filling it in as one big block, I think it's really nice to have an individualistic style when you come to small kitchens, so that it doesn't always have to follow the same as everybody else's. These units in this kitchen also go right to the ceiling, although obviously in this case the bank of units doesn't go all the way across, or there'd be no worktop in this very small kitchen. I really like this kitchen. It looks nice and bright and cheerful. I like the fact that though the units go right up to the ceiling, there's glass in the top. It kind of gives that little bit of mystery, which I love. If you've heard me before, I love seeing a bit of mystery appear in a kitchen and just peeping in to see, oh, I wonder what books they've got in that top glass cabinet. That to me is a nice intriguing feature. But using the height for sure, which releases extra worktop space. There's also one thing in this picture which will flow onto the next section I've got, which is about flexibility. And you can see the thing I love in here is that they've got a little drop-down table in this kitchen. We often like a place in the kitchen either to sit while something's cooking, while the kettle is boiling, just to read a magazine, to take a collect, or to have our breakfast. And in a very small kitchen, these are things which sometimes are not possible. In this kitchen, they've got a drop-up, drop-down table, which I think serves a purpose really well. So that takes us on to our next category, which is think multi-purpose. So we don't have the benefit in a small kitchen of giving a place for everything and having the world. We have to multitask, multi-use things. So here is just some quick ideas about things that we could use. First is a ventilating hob. So by having a hob with the ventilation inside of it, it means, of course, a bit like our downdraft, we get the release of a wall unit, or the unit that would have housed the extraction in. These are great. I mean, this is relatively new technology, and now all kinds of companies are bringing these hobs out. We're putting them in so often now. There was a kind of, right at the beginning, it was like, will they work? Can it be possible? And I've heard a lot of people say it defies the laws of physics, etc. But from the response I've got to clients who've used these hobs with the downdraft extraction, so you're cooking, and as you're doing so, the steam is being pulled down into that extraction right in front of you. I've only heard success stories, so that is absolutely fantastic, because one less appliance in the kitchen is great news for everybody, and especially those who've got small kitchens. This is a picture, 2 pictures put together, of a mobile drainer. One of the things about small kitchens and multi-spacing, and I think one of the most precious things, is the worktop space. The most sensible thing for me to do is to not buy a sink which has a drainer. Not buy a sink which has either got a drainer or have drainer grooves built into your undermount sink, because wherever you've got a drainer or you've got the grooves, you actually haven't got a practical other working space. You've got some impediment in the way that's going to prevent you chopping or doing what you need to do, buttering bread, etc. So this kind of mobile drainer that you can get, and they come in various different shapes and forms, from metal ones, plastic ones, and in this case, it's just a silicone one. I think it's perfect. You lay it out on your flat worktop and it overhangs the edge of your undermount sink, and you drain on there, water drains into it. And when you've done washing up, or if the washing's dry, you shake it out and you fold it up and you put it away, and now you've got the space to use again. I really think that the use of these mobile clever little tips is perfect for the smaller kitchen. Here is an example of an oven which not only multi-purposes in that it's got pulse steam, which means that you're adding a little bit of moisture in as you cook, so getting an effect of adding the steam that you might have using a steamer type arrangement, which is a separate appliance, but also it has a microwave included in this one as well. So you've got microwave technology, steam pulse technology, and a regular oven, all in one 60-centimetre oven. And for those of you who perhaps don't microwave very often and are tossing up with that, do I need a microwave at all? I mean, there was a time when inbuilt microwaves were becoming more and more popular as people were beginning to get to know how to use combination microwaves. But what I've seen over the last probably 4 years is a retraction from those combination microwaves, and people are either getting simpler and they're just going back to a more basic microwave because they've got plenty of space and they can put a microwave in, or they're actually removing the built-in microwave from the kitchen itself and going back to an on-counter, cheap but very functional microwave that can either sit alone on a countertop or go inside a cupboard and is plugged in the back wall and you open it then. With a smaller kitchen, of course, and if you're not using a microwave very often, but you do want the occasional bit, then what about having something like this? A great idea to have an oven which has got the capacity, but you don't have to use up extra space with a microwave. And I think my final example really on doubling up and multi-using is this nifty little bin. Okay, so not a huge bin, maybe not the most glamorous of bins, but I tell you what, one of the things that people have when they come to me is they often, with a small kitchen, forget that a bin even exists in a kitchen. So in their minds, they've designed the kitchen. I've got to have a washing machine. I need a tumble dryer. I need to have a dishwasher. I need to have an oven. I need to have my boiler. Basically, you get a list of appliances. You get about 2 cupboards left for the storage, which have to work really well. But this little nifty idea isn't so funny after when you consider those things and the fact that you may actually gain either floor space because you wouldn't have to have a large freestanding bin in your room, or you gain some cabinet space by not having a bin unit in it. I haven't shown a side view here, but they literally just clip on and off the door. So when you can use them when you're preparing, you put everything into it, then they kind of compress, they enlarge and compress, and you can obviously put a bag in first, and then you just take them out. It means you have to work a little bit harder. You have to get rid of your refuse quicker, more regularly. But if the key is to saving storage space in your kitchen, then this can't be something that you just ignore. So we've covered multi-purpose. Now I've got prioritise. In fact, I did try to change the slide earlier and it didn't work for me. So prioritise is a good word, and I do want to talk about it a little bit, but mainly my photographs are about something different, which is about using the room space. The priority when you come to use a small kitchen to think about how you're going to prioritize is actually a really important thing. You see, you can't have it all if you are talking small, but you must decide what is important to you, and it's not what is important to somebody else. So for you, it may be what's important is having countertop to connect with people while you work. That may be more important to you than whether you manage to get your washing machine in the kitchen. To somebody else, it will be vital that they can store their washing machine in the kitchen over everything else, because there is nowhere else in the whole house that it could go other than the kitchen, and other things have to be sacrificed. So when I'm talking to somebody and they've got a very small kitchen, although I like to go into dreams, we all love that, it's really important to do a dreams list and a priorities list at the same time, because then the kitchen expert can help decide of those dreams which are possible through technology, clever innovations, etc., and which of these things which are priorities must stay at the top of the list in terms of what I'm offering the client. So I've kind of put priorities there, but I also want to talk about the structure of the room itself. So this picture here shows a small kitchen as part of an open living plan space, and I just titled it down the bottom, The Peninsula Secret. And the reason why I put that and related it to the use of the structure and, in a way, the priorities of the kitchen is that in many people's minds, if they can achieve an island in their kitchen, they feel like they've got what they want. But I just wanted to put it out there that an island in a small kitchen is 6 times out of 10 the wrong thing to do, because you're actually not using the space either side of the island very effectively. You've got 2 accesses in and out. And in this kitchen here, instead of having an island, you've got what you call a peninsula, which is where your island is attached to the wall, in effect. What that means is, instead of having 2 ins and outs, you've only got 1, which, yes, could make it slightly more awkward for dual people using it, but it gives you that whole extra space. And look how clever they've been in this particular scenario by putting the hob on the peninsula, but putting it towards the end where the window is, and running the, if you like, the wall from the floor up and across, creating a nice little barrier, but actually a very amicable barrier, especially when it's kind of color enhanced like this. But behind that hob, you've got a splash guard, and you've also got a place to hang your utensils on the wall too. So I think this is a fantastic little kitchen for the space. And a great way that it shows you that when you have an awkward space and you want an island, a peninsula could perhaps be a better option for you. This picture also helps me talk about, number 1, priorities, but number 2, the structure of a kitchen. And it shows a very small kitchen, but they've used the space so effectively. They obviously had a priority of being seated whilst they were in the kitchen, but at the same time, they've used these very straight lines to define the kitchen and to get the very best out of it. So those are my tips for the smaller kitchen. At the end of the day, I think creating beauty is so important, and this is maybe not the smallest of kitchens. It's one of the smallest kitchens that I had from a somatic brochure, but I think it is compact and shows such beauty and using texture.
5 minutes left.
Oh, I've been told I have only got 5 minutes left, and I haven't even got to the large ones. So I'm so sorry if anyone's running late. I didn't even realise I could talk so long. I will do my best to. This is the last slide in the small section, and so if I need to take your questions separately, then I will do. But this is the ultimate in compact style. As you can see, it's just simply a bureau with a sink, oops, I've gone back. A sink, a hob. It had to prioritise no dishwasher, but I think you'll all agree it's actually a stunning beauty for a small kitchen. So I hope that's helped you people out there who've got the small kitchens. And if you can wait a little bit longer, people with bigger kitchens, we're just off now. So I want to take these in a slightly different way, because the benefit of a large kitchen generally is you can get almost everything you want in. And the people that I've spoken to that have large kitchens are all about flow. How does this work with my home? How does it connectivity with the rest of my home, with the people in my home, with the outside view of my home? How am I going to both flow and connect? How am I going to zone things so I don't feel I'm in a cavernous, spacious place where I don't feel grounded and I'm almost feel isolated in being large? How can I bring some kind of order into my kitchen to compartmentalize in some sense of a large kitchen? And ultimately, how can I get this wow factor? Because although we can get wow in a small kitchen, like I just showed, I think the people who have a large kitchen are much more aware that they're looking for a wow factor. It's much higher up on their list of priorities because they have less to lose. So these are the 4 things that constantly my clients are coming to me with. In essence, they're saying, can you make it do absolutely everything? In actual fact, the large kitchen, it doesn't matter how large, whether it's medium large, large, or extra large, everybody wants it to do absolutely everything. And sometimes that can be the hardest thing to do. So I'm going to run through an overall of my list of do's for the large kitchen, and rather than go through slide by slide as we did with the small kitchens and show you examples as we go along, first I'm giving you the list, and then I'm going to show you a set of, I think it's 5 or 6 kitchens, and show you how they relate to the things that we've talked about. So the first one is to look at what the room is saying. Really important when looking at proportions of a room, grounding of a room, atmosphere of a room, and presence of a room. We have to engage with a large room. What is the room saying to me? Is it saying I'm dramatic? Is it saying I'm light and airy? Am I moody? What is the room, the aspect of the house saying? The second thing that a large kitchen is saying is, how do I connect with other areas of the home? Where am I positioned even? You know, it has been that we've actually changed where the position of a kitchen is within a home when someone's come to us, because it's been tucked away at the end of a house, and it should be as central as possible in order to access the lounge, the snug, the sitting room, etc. And be easy for guests as well. So how is it connected to other areas of the home, and how am I maintaining connectivity within that? What about uninterrupted flow of the chef? This is a real do. If you've got a large kitchen, quite likely you're going to have a lot of people coming in and out. Those lot of people can be hanging around in your kitchen and creating quite a nuisance if they happen to be in the way of where you need to be. So maintaining uninterrupted flow for the chef in the large kitchens is critical. And finally, the other key thing for the larger kitchens is let the room breathe. It must have areas of open space. It must reveal that it has the capacity to have this free space, because it is big, and to let that do talking. So that's really important. Creating zones is vital. We know that, especially in this new world we're living in, we are multitasking at home, and our kitchens are not just kitchens, they're studies. In fact, I think I wrote down a list of about 10 things that the large kitchen needed to be, and I probably don't have time to go through this now, but you'll know from experience, if you're a large kitchen user, that you want it to be functional for every member of the family, not just the cook. So we must make these zones distinctive. And the thing that we can do with large kitchens that we couldn't do so much with a smaller kitchen is we can play with colour, tone, texture, contrast. We can have a painter's, joy in this kitchen in order to make it both individualistic and for the bits that need to stand out to stand out. So I just want to walk you through some of the larger kitchens that I've got on these shots here, and just talk with you about those things. So the first thing is the room dynamics. I really want to show you this kitchen because this is a kitchen that only had one window. It's a large size kitchen, but it's on the smaller size of large. If you were to, for example, try to put an island in here, you could make it work, and in here they've got table and chairs, so of course an island could work, but it's not massively roomy. But someone with a small kitchen is going to say this is enormous, I know. One thing you can see is the wall on the left was deeper to the left-hand side, but it's been built out to house the fridge freezer housing and this tall storage unit here, whereas the side on the right hand has remained open. But the clever thing in this kitchen is that if you were to draw a line down, say, the chandelier through the table up through here, you've got wonderful symmetry from side to side, which has been created by this splashback, not going right to the edge here. That's a very clever trick here. If that splashback had gone right to the edge, the room would look asymmetrical and something would appear wrong. So working with the room dynamics means you have to be clever about how you position things and not just do what everybody else always does. Look how this whole wall has been dedicated to one extractor. Well, what extravagance, no wall units whatsoever in sight on that wall. That's what I call giving the room space to breathe. I love that. I love that that was not a crowded wall. Look at the use of glass and texture in this room. So you've got stainless steel, you've got the granite, the rough, you've got the wooden table, you've got the light wood floor, you've got gloss handles over here, painted units. There is a mixture of texture going on in this very rich and classical looking kitchen. And so we're working with the room dynamics, but we're also playing with some of the other things that I said about connectivity. It could be that this room was entered on the right here through a door on the right, or it could be that this room is entered through doors here behind where we're standing. Well, I know, but you wouldn't know looking at this picture which was the case. Nevertheless, the impact of the entry into this kitchen, I think you'll see, has this ultimate wow factor. Now, what a contrasting kitchen this is, with a kitchen which has its distinctive zones very readily for everybody to see. So we have a table and chairs, we have a sofa area, we have the cook zone. The cook zone is very cleverly guarded behind the island here, whereas in the picture previously, it was less so. It was sheltered only by the use of the table in the middle of the room. But notice how they've cleverly turned the oven round to face the kitchen, and then that has exposed beautiful cabinetry down to the floor units, which are then accessible as storage units for the rest of the home. I think it's a great idea in a large room to make sure your storage is elegant enough to be living room storage, yet practical enough to be kitchen storage. And this is the clever thing that you can do with premium and luxury market is use the same furniture in your kitchen and in your living areas, because the quality is so high and the beauty is so great. In fact, in here, I think you've even got the matching book match wood, which makes it even more spectacular. So in this room, there's a place for people to do their homework. There's a place for people to look at the view. There's a place for people to relax. and never far from the cook. So you've got connectivity in this kitchen. You've got space and airiness because we've got all this open. You have guarding the cook zone, and you've definitely considered the aesthetics of the room because it's a very modern kitchen in a very modern building. So all those boxes have really been ticked. In this kitchen here, another really light and airy kitchen, but look at the shelf spacing. So plenty of room for individualism, but also look at that. There's a massive rug in the center of the room with appearing nothing going on in there. What a great space for children to bring their bean bags and sit and read books and play games while you're in the kitchen and can talk to them. I think that's a fab space, just being left open, and the rug does it all really. It actually makes use of that space, it ties it in, it gives it a warmth and a boundary, but at the same time is an inviting place for people to come. The cook, on the other hand, is guarded, being set off into an area where there's a wonderful view, so they can actually use practical work surface along 2 spaces and have access to all their ovens inside tall cabinets, but very tucked away, so their space is really guarded there. On the other hand, it's very easy for people to perch at the worktop here, make themselves a coffee, enjoy the view and a conversation, or equally come down and sit at the table, read a book. Connectivity is definitely something which this kitchen is really showing. We've got connectivity with the landscape, connectivity with the home that it's in, the structure of it, and connectivity to people that might come into this kitchen. But nothing's compromised in terms of filling every space with tall units. This space here, couple of things I really want to show you in this space is number one, in a large space, you don't have to take the units to the ceiling all the time like you might have to in a smaller space. And look how the walls are framed, they're high ceilings, the cabinets don't even attempt to go to the ceiling, but actually they're framed even on this wall. And there's a lovely space being kept to the end here where my cursor is pointing, where they could have put units all the way around, but it wouldn't have been necessary. And actually having this L shape going on here, repeated by the L shape continuing here, just really is very kind on the eye. At the same time, we've got beautiful symmetry of tall here, and then we've got the 3 on the island and the 3 wall units at the back, giving us a beautiful symmetry down the centre here. And symmetry is something which both large and small kitchens will benefit from, but in the larger kitchen you can be much more expressive, and so the symmetry really can play out so beautifully. Again, a lovely perching place for families to come and to sit and to talk, to eat, etc., whilst not impacting what the chef is doing. Lots of connectivity with both the environment and the room itself, and the house type, you know, with these mezzanine floor levels. So some lovely levels going on here with the level of the bench, the squareness, and then this type of home. So I think the structure of the kitchen that you put in, connecting with the structure of your home, is also really important to look at. Two more kitchens to look at. This one here, which is totally different feel. This is an urban loft house feel, not so much the type of thing that we in England use very much, but very European. Look at the free space. Look at not putting anything on these walls here. Open shelving. What about this? You've got the bureau, which is totally disconnected and freestanding, and actually hard to see behind my banner, but this is a freestanding unit as well, not separated. Anyone with a small kitchen would say, why not join it with get the extra workspace? But here we've got the actual opposite feeling of we don't need the space, we have plenty, let's flaunt it. A perch for someone to be participant in the prep or to just sit and chat, but a casual table, not too far, not too nearby. And lighting which reflects the nature of the style of house, that the lighting is inset here just as it is in the panelling on the wall. So lots of mirroring of styles from the home coming into the style of the kitchen. Dual level worktops, which again, harder to achieve in a small kitchen, but double dual level means that multi-users, means that you can get shorter people and taller people using the kitchen together, which gives a much more cohesive feel. And of course, we can be generous with those things when we have a large kitchen to work in. I lied, there's two more. So this one is about having areas of multi-focus. When you have a large kitchen, you don't just have to have a simple area focus. You can actually put your focus on many things. And in this kitchen, I think you can see the island is a focus. This stunning storage here is a focus. And look how they haven't brought those down to the ground. Again, they've flaunted the space underneath. And again, storage on the right hand side, which is also stunning. There's lots to look at in this kitchen. That would take almost a separate PowerPoint to do so. And clever corners aren't just for small kitchens, I've said in here. You know, not everybody likes open cabinetry, but it is a very welcoming, hospitable feel. It's the kind of thing as roll up your sleeves and come and join me. That's what this kitchen is trying to say. Handles, very intuitive kitchen. You know where the drawers are, you know where the appliances are, you know where things are, because they're very, very obviously stated. But this kitchen is facing the light, which obviously we all want to make a priority. It's got plenty of workspace for everyone to come and join, and the angle on this is great. It's just so unusual to see a kitchen where you're using the outside angles of something. And just to show to you that in case there's some clever people out there who are crying, well, that's not protecting the chef space, the next slide just shows, if you like, the position of it within the building as a whole. What we just saw was the inside of that island and coming round here. So actually this space here that we saw is totally where the hob is very protected for the chef. And if someone wants something for the fridge, they go here, but they don't go inside there. And it's very connected because of the little low-level seating here, and also the proximity of the casual seating just across the way within an earshot, so that you can either see a television or you can connect to the people within that space. So I know that's been really quick. I'm hoping that I've thrown a few things out there that maybe you haven't heard before. And I'm hoping that that's kind of just got your brains whirring and thinking a bit more. So for those of you who have got time to stick around, I have got some questions here, and I will answer the ones that have come in, and Keith will tell me if there's any more. So I've got one here. We have a water softener. Can this be integrated with a cooker tap? Yes, you can have a water softener and a cooker tap, and you can have the ability to turn to take the water softener off of elements of the drinking water, so that it's not going through the part where you're going to be drinking the fresh water. If I'm perfectly honest, Chris, it was you who asked this question. This always gets me every time, the water softener question, because I always have to go back to the book and look at it. So Keith will be able to answer this question far better than me.
Shall I just go live for a second?
He's going to go live a bit, because that will help me out of this hole.
Thank you.
I don't know if you can hear me or not. I've just got to watch. Oh, there you are, Chris. Can you just turn your sound down, Helena? Just use the keyboard mute button. Sorry, because we're in the same room, so we're going to get an echo. Right, yeah, the situation is fairly straightforward in one sense. The issue with regard to a water softener is that water bylaws basically say that there is some residual salt within the water. So they don't advise it's used for drinking water, even though it's been descaled. Now, that basically means that the level of salt that is within the water is generally really only affecting young babies, people with blood pressure issues, or the elderly. So for most people, there's probably more salt in, I think, a slice of bread than there is in a litre of water. So it's actually quite low. But the general recommendation is that you don't put water softener water through a cooker filter. So what cooker actually do is they separate it completely aside from the water softener. You bring a hard water supply into the cooker tap via a scale filter, and then basically you're removing the scale through a filter, which needs to be replaced probably once every year. And therefore that scale stops the unit from being scaled up, and also stops some impurities going through the unit. With their cold water systems, they also have the ability to filter the drinking water through there, but still retain the scale. Now, that doesn't work in a scenario where you want to put drinking water into a coffee machine or into a kettle or a pan. You don't want the scale to remain. So what we've actually done in our tap at home is we've taken a cold water drinking feed from after the scale filter and then through the drinking filter. So it slows the water flow down quite a lot because of the two filters it does lose some pressure because there's a resistance. But that's the best way to actually approach it. So I'll basically keep your descaled water through the water softener completely separate from your drinking part, and then just run the scale through that area. Hope that's helpful, and I shall pass you back to Helena.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
You're going to have to pop your sound back on if you want it on.
Thanks, Keith. I knew he'd be good to keep in the room despite eating cheese and biscuits while I was talking. The other question I've had is, what is the best storage for spices? I've got 25 plus. Yes, I mean, there's lots. So there's some questions to ask really regarding that, and some assumptions to make. So it's easy if we go to the shop and we buy, you know, the small spices like this in the Swatch jars, etc., whatever. We often don't want to decant those because why decant them when it's got the sticker telling us the date when they should be used by and the, you know, the item, and they all look nice and arranged in a row. So if you're using spices that are kind of like in those pre-prepared smaller jars, then the perfect arrangement for those is the using the multi-matic tracking system, which I showed on some of the smaller kitchens. And there are some baskets either called provisions baskets, or they're herbs and spice baskets, and in those you can actually store those quite nicely, and you can layer those. I think you can get probably about 8 in a tall larder, or less if you had other things that you wanted to get on the back of the doors as well, and actually have rows of those spices, and actually make sure that cabinet that you're using, when it's opened, you're quite near to the surface that you're going to be using the spices for. So if not in a tall cabinet, maybe in a wall cabinet. So that's one way. There are drawer inserts where you can get spice vials, glass jars, and decant spices and put them into. They look absolutely beautiful, but they're also a lot of work. So they're only for the people who are going to buy the spices, decant them, put them into these beautiful looking vials, and then use them like that. Most people don't do that. So they're available if you want to use them. And I think they're in sets of about 6. And we have some in the studio as examples. I haven't got a quick picture to show you, but they are actually stunning. But the other thing is, if people are cooking Asian food and buy them in the large quantities, then you know, like different spices, but in really large packets, then To be honest, I had a wonderful client in Reading who used so many different Indian spices, and she had an amazing system. And actually, to be honest, she bought her own from John Lewis, if I can plug them for a moment, special seal tops that they just kind of, they've got a special grip that when you lift it seals, so really nice and easy for letting air out. But they were all, I'm trying to show you, and I don't know if you can actually see me, that they were quite large tubs. And then she personally labelled all of these, and she had about 40 of these boxes. I've got a photograph somewhere so I can actually show you. And she put them layer by layer in a special larder cabinet with those pull-out drawers that I showed earlier on, the deep and the shallow drawers. And literally, I've got a picture of that pulled out and all these spices all arranged. So that's for the person who really has a lot of spices, a lot of cooking, and is using them in vast quantities. So kind of 3 different ways there, hopefully, from the person who doesn't use them often through that, you know, I would suggest. But if you use spices in your cooking, having them to hand is really critical. One of the things I do in my kitchen, and mine is just a kind of like, I've got an extractor, a wall extractor hood, which takes up part of a wall cabinet, but not all of my wall cabinet. So I've got about, I don't know, 15 centimetres, maybe 20, in front of the internals of the extractor, which is kind of almost dead space. And I've got my spices all racked into there. So that just has to be find what you can, but put them there. But I find that perfect because my hob's against a wall, my extractor's above. I open the wall unit up like this, and I grab my spices out like this. So at the end of the day, when I'm designing a kitchen for anybody, and any of our team are designing a kitchen for anybody, one of the things we're asking is, how do you cook? What do you cook? And that helps form part of our design so that we understand if spices are something that are important, we've got to place them right, position them right, and get the right storage for you. So I hope that's kind of helped a little. Were there any other questions, Keith? No, there are no questions, and I've overrun by 7 minutes, so I hope you bore with me on that. And it was really lovely having you, and there will be another design talk.
I'm not sure if we're going to go weekly or monthly, right?
Yeah, at this point, we're not quite sure whether we're going to wait another month, or because people